Bienvenidos, soy Diana Lucero.
Edgar Aguilar.
Welcome back to CHIRLA TV. Thank you for joining us once again. I hope you enjoyed our previous episodes. And today we have two more guests, Pedro Trujillo, who's joined us in the past, and Shannon Camacho. Can you please, Shannon, introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Shannon. Thank you for having me. I am a campaign coordinator with CHIRLA, and specifically I coordinate the LA Reads Rapid Response Network.
And I'm Pedro Trujillo. Thank you for having us, and it's great being back here. Congrats on the success of the show.
It's great to have you here once again. The Rapid Response Network, what is this? How did it get started, and what exactly does it accomplish?
So the Rapid Response Network, it's a coalition of different organizations in Los Angeles, over 30 organizations that work together to respond to immigration enforcement. So what we really do is try to provide the community with support, whether that be legal support or visiting at the detention centers, anything to help them after they are arrested by ICE. So CHIRLA is a part of the Rapid Response Network, and there are other partners as well.
Was CHIRLA one of the original starters of this program, or how did it come to be?
Yeah, in 2007, there was rumors nationally that there was going to be ICE raids happening, right? And so that people were going to be picked up by immigration and customs enforcement. And so CHIRLA decided to reach out to its partners and say, hey, let's get a plan in place that protects immigrants, or how are we going to get to them to support them in case they do get detained? And you know, a week or two later, there was an actual ICE raid in a large factory in the San Fernando Valley out here in Los Angeles. And over 100 workers were picked up. And so the Raise Rapid Response Network provided, one, like folks to go on the ground and let the workers who were just arrested, let them know their rights, to not sign anything, to remain silent. And then the other thing is that we actually had volunteer attorneys to go and work on these cases of people who were being detained. And so a few years later, some of those workers, we were actually able to keep them in the country, and they were actually able to legalize their status thanks to the work of the Raise Rapid Response Network. But in terms of like the ICE raids and things like that, they've changed a bit since then.
So you mentioned that it got started in 2007. We've come a long way since then. What kind of changes have you seen when it comes to how the rapid response is utilized?
Yeah, there definitely have been changes in the scope, priorities, and the tactics that ICE uses when it does enforcement. So we've seen, for example, like Pedro was mentioning, under the Obama administration, there were moments where there were a lot of worksite enforcement raids in the form of I-9 audits. And so essentially what that is ICE goes to a business to try to verify the workers' eligibility to work in the country legally. And so we saw a lot of that. And I think that really prompted the network to be able to respond in a way that's strategic. So that means partnering with the unions, for example, and working within the labor movement to provide resources to these workers that are affected. But most recently, I'd say, is since Trump took office, what we've seen is that now any undocumented person has really become a priority for ICE. And so that creates a lot of fear in the community, and there are community members that are afraid that ICE may show up at their house. And so the way that we've responded is really to strategize, find ways to work with other rapid response networks to be able to provide immediate support and figure out creative ways to make sure that we can get legal support to these individuals right after they're arrested.
That's wonderful. So we have the phone number where people can reach out to CHIRLA for the rapid response. And at the same time, do you have a large team within CHIRLA, or how do you guys network around in California?
So I am the coordinator of the Rapid Response Network, so I'm tasked with facilitating us, making sure that we're meeting regularly and helping strategize. Pedro is our organizing lead, so when it comes to working with the community members, trying to get them involved with the network, Pedro helps out with that. And so we both really work on things like Know Your Rights presentations, for example, and that's really like our task. And there are other organizations in the network.
Would you say that Know Your Rights would be the first form of defense, and then the rapid response, how does that play into the situation when raids happen?
Yeah, I would say that Know Your Rights is the most crucial aspect that people, or the first step that people can take, immigrants can take to protect themselves and their families, really. Sometimes, you know, we make mistakes, and so a few folks may have had some incident with the law, no matter how small, that actually made them a priority for immigration today. And so we don't want immigration to come to someone's home and they're not prepared, they don't know their rights, and it turns out that they come and pick up someone else, or they pick up more people than they should. And so Know Your Rights is the crucial first step that people need to take.
Perfect. So if you want to know your rights, visit CHIRLA.org, where there is a whole page, I understand, where you can read all of your rights and everything that CHIRLA has to offer to protect you. We'll continue our conversation about the Rapid Response Network right after this.
Welcome back. Once again, I'm your host, Diana and Edgar, and today we're joined by Shannon and Pedro. So we're going to continue the conversation on the Rapid Response Network that CHIRLA is part of. Can we have a conversation about what is an ICE raid? And can you give us an example of what we see in LA?
It's very important to know that ICE enforcement looks very different depending on where you live. So the United States, we have 50 states, and all of these states are different. The laws are different, policies are different. And so we can see in places, for example, like Tennessee, early last year, there was an operation, an ICE operation where 97 workers were arrested in a one-day sting in Tennessee. And so the way that ICE was able to arrest these 97 individuals was by cooperating with local law enforcement in that small town in Tennessee. So if ICE wasn't able to work with the police to arrest those people, they wouldn't have had the ability to do so. And so this resulted in 97 families being separated and the community just being destroyed. And so we are very fortunate that here in California, and specifically in Los Angeles, we don't see those kinds of enforcement operations. It's very different here.
Why would you say that's the case?
The reason why it's different here in California, it's really because of the work that organizations like CHIRLA have done. So organizations, immigrant rights organizations, have worked really hard for many years to be able to pass pro-immigrant legislation in California. So for example, SB 54, the California Values Act. What this policy does is it prevents ICE from being able to cooperate with local law enforcement in some aspects. And so because of that, we don't see these kinds of large-scale one-day raids in California because our police have restrictions placed on them in the ways that they're able to cooperate with ICE to do enforcement. So we're very fortunate in that case that we don't see those kind of operations, but we do still see ICE enforcement.
How do you see it if we're not seeing it in mass numbers like we do in other states? How does it happen here, especially in LA?
Right. So the way that we see it here in LA is we have ICE do at-home community arrests. Sometimes these are called sweeps. And so essentially what this is very early in the morning, ICE will go to the home of an individual that they've already targeted. So they already have information on this individual, their name and where they live. And they go to their home early in the morning to try to arrest them. And they do this because they know that the family is home at that time. And a lot of the times these are folks that are going to work. And so they're going in their car and they're leaving, and ICE already knows that. And so an arrest will take place early in the morning, and that's how they're able to get them into the detention centers. That's what we see, but that is not something that is necessarily done in one day. They spread this out over a series of days, and at the end, they've arrested hundreds of individuals.
That's terrible that this is happening to our community, but luckily we know we have the rapid response. How does the rapid response take play when this happens to individuals?
So when we hear of these at-home community arrests, or we get word from other local rapid response networks that have hotlines, for example, what we do is we immediately try to figure out where this person is, because once they're arrested, they're sent to either a processing center or a detention center. And so we have to gather specific information from the family to figure out where they are currently located. Once we figure out where they are, that's when we can activate in a legal sort of way. We can figure out whether or not they need an attorney for intake and have that attorney go out to the detention center or the processing center where they are to meet with them, and then to also relay information back to the family, right? To let them know that they're okay and that they're moving forward with legal representation.
Can you actually give us an example of where the rapid response was applied?
Yeah, actually, like last year, we witnessed here locally in Los Angeles and across the nation, of course, but here in Los Angeles, we heard word that there was going to be ICE coming in to inspect work authorization through what they call I-9 audits, right, in different businesses in Los Angeles. They had gone to San Francisco, and then we heard of them in Los Angeles. And one of these particular places actually reached out to us, which was a 7-Eleven. And the 7-Eleven said, hey, we got this notice from immigration. What do we do, right? And so we alerted the Raise Rapid Response Network, and we activated, and we were there the day that ICE was supposed to show up to question the employer about their employees, right? And so we were there in demonstration outside of the 7-Eleven, And 20 minutes before their scheduled arrival, they call the manager and they say, hey, you know what? We're gonna have this conversation offline and outside of the workspace, which is a huge victory for us because you can, you know, if you put yourself in the place of the workers, you can't imagine the stress they're going through thinking that, oh, I'm gonna have federal agents coming into my workplace, right? For anyone, regardless of the immigration status, it's a scary moment to actually think that there's gonna be federal agents coming in, right? And so it was a victory for us to be there and support with the workers and that they saw that organizing works, right? A couple of weeks later, there was more I-9 audits in the area, and we were able to, again, activate in 5 different locations. The community responded saying, ICE, you're not welcome here.
This is great and important information that we must all know. You mentioned earlier that the first step is knowing your rights, and then if something happens, to reach out to the Rapid Response Network. So when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Know Your Rights and how it is applied when something like this takes place.
But before we go, ICE, you're not welcome here.
And we're back here at CHIRLA TV, the immigrant voice. We are accompanied by Pedro Trujillo and Shannon as well from CHIRLA. They are part of the Rapid Response Network and the organizing team. I understand that knowing your rights is the most important part. So where can people find their rights if they have a problem? The CHIRLA website, for example?
Yeah, the CHIRLA website is a great resource. On top, in Spanish and English, we'll have the information there for you, or you can print it, download it, share it with your family members. Go over it, certainly with your family members, because the most important thing is to not waive your rights when in front of immigration. Many people will go ahead and just turn themselves in. Unfortunately, again, Shannon mentioned earlier that immigration arrests here in California, most of them have actually been through being at home, at-home visits. And for the most part, ICE doesn't have warrants. Why wouldn't they have warrants signed by a judge? It just takes a long time. It's a lengthy process for them to actually get a warrant, and so they won't have them. They'll be lazy about it, and they'll just come with what's called an administrative warrant. An administrative warrant, it's almost as if I would bring a Post-it to your house, a Post-it note that I filled out with your name on it, and I say, please turn yourself in, I'm taking you and I'm arresting you, right? That's the power that administrative warrant has, and that's the type of warrants that they use. And it's confusing because the community sees these warrants, administrative warrants, and they think, oh, they have a warrant. They told me that if they have a warrant, I have to turn myself in. And that's not the case. If it's not signed by a judge, it's not a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant means that a court said that it was okay, right? And so protect yourself and your family. You have to know these differences, and it's just homework. It's tedious, but it's just homework that people have to do to protect themselves.
So, we know that folks can go on the CHIRLA website and find this information. Does CHIRLA go out to the community and give out this information?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's one of our tasks for, and for the Raise Rapid Response Network as well, is that we go to the community, do presentations, do trainings. We actually even we'll go to an apartment complex and get all the tenants together and be like, let's create a plan as to how to protect yourself from ICE in this apartment complex, right? Those type of conversations we'll have. I'll just tell them something simple. It's like, why was I able to get into this apartment complex when there's a door that could be locked in the front, right? Something as simple as a lock can already create a defense mechanism, right? A barrier.
So it's definitely the getting the community involved to protect their neighbors. To protect their families, be informed. So you've been all over California, different cities up north and southern California. What has been the response from the public, from the people that you talk to? Have they been pleased, excited, or now they have more information?
At first people would be concerned.
Of course.
And it's just a lot of information, and then when you speak about the reality, right, truth hurts sometimes, right? But in terms of the RAID's Rapid Response Network has grown, and Shannon can speak a little bit about where the different places and the need are right now.
In terms of where we are primarily tasked with making sure that we respond to folks in LA County, so folks that are experiencing an ICE arrest in LA County, but there are other rapid response networks throughout the state of California. There are rapid response networks in Northern California, in San Diego, in the Inland Empire, and it's especially important to have them there because those are places where there aren't a lot of legal service providers. centers or organizations like CHIRLA.
So we know that one of the trainings you could get is a Know Your Rights training, but there's also a training to be a first responder, which would be part of the rapid response. Can you tell us a little bit of what a first responder is and what their role is?
Yeah, we created this under this administration because we were actually going to be seeing ICE activity, and we were concerned that there was going to be anyone out there to protect or help immigrant community in need. And so anyone, any person, can help us out. It doesn't matter their immigration status, where they're coming from. If you want to help out the community by becoming a first responder, you can just come and report, right? Go report, what did you see, and send that information to us, because that's valuable information for the Raise Rapid Response Networks from across the state and for attorneys that can actually support the immigrants, right? Were there any laws broken when people were being picked up? Were there people actually targeted based off of their skin color? Those things we need to know, and we need to document them, and first responders can do that.
Shannon, as the coordinator of the campaign Rapid Response, can you tell us what legal resources are available through your network?
We partner with different organizations, different legal service providers. Specifically in Los Angeles, we have organizations through the LA Justice Fund. So this is a fund that gives grant money to organizations that do removal defense and go out to the detention centers. So we work with attorneys from these organizations. CHIRLA has a removal defense department, and so we work very closely with the attorneys to be able to get them out to the detention centers, so that if there is somebody that was picked up, we know that we can have an attorney go out there and do an intake, which would be the first step.
Well, you both are doing really great work for the community as well as CHIRLA. Folks at home, please stay tuned. We're going to have them back right after these commercials.
We're back here at CHIRLA TV, the Immigrant Voice, with Pedro and Shannon. We've been talking about the Rapid Response Network when it comes to Los Angeles. But it is my understanding that there is a larger group, which is the California side of it all. Can you give us a little bit more insight on this?
Sure. So we are the LA Raid Rapid Response Network, but there are other regions in California that have their own networks. Okay. And it really, a rapid response network really varies in terms of what kind of enforcement you're seeing in your specific region. So like I was mentioning, we have these at-home community arrests that take place early in the morning, and it may be different in San Diego, and it may be different in Northern California. So one thing I think that, one really important thing about rapid response is there are some networks that have a 24-hour hotline. And so this is really important because, like I mentioned, if somebody is getting picked up at 5 a.m., most organizations or most attorneys are not sitting by the phone. So these networks have 24/7 hotlines that community members can call for immediate support. So some networks have that, and then there are also networks, for example, in Northern California, they have funded attorneys. So the attorney is not a typical attorney, they don't have a caseload, but instead they respond to emergency requests. So if someone was just arrested and they're at a processing center, an attorney can respond there. So it really varies throughout the state, these different networks.
Are these networks connected in any way? Do you guys share resources and insight? What's going on in Northern California, of course, is sometimes different than what's taking place here in Southern California.
Yeah, so we definitely are already connected by the fact that the immigration court system and the detention centers are all spread throughout California. And so I'll give you an example. If somebody was picked up by ICE in Oxnard, California, which is in the Central Coast, if they were picked up there by ICE, most likely they're going to be sent to the downtown Los Angeles processing center. And so from downtown Los Angeles, they'll most likely be sent to a detention facility. And one of the detention facilities that folks are sent to a lot is Adelanto. And so from Oxnard to downtown LA to Adelanto, that's over 150 miles of distance. And so you can imagine that folks would have immense trouble being able to contact an attorney, their families, and schedule visitation and all that. So it's very important that our networks that are located in all those regions work very closely together so that we're able to share information and meet folks where they're at in the process.
And it's critical that we actually act fast. You know, Raise Rapid Response Network has to be fast because
it is in the name.
Right, and then rapid response. There was a case just recently about a man who their family member called us saying, hey, my partner's arrested, and they picked him up like in the morning, 6 a.m., typical case, outside of their workplace, and by 9 p.m. the same day, they had already been removed from the country, right? And so if there isn't an attorney moving, right, obviously every case is different, not everyone's gonna be removed from the country the same day, but certain cases, they are what's known as eligible for expedited removal. We have to act fast and have an attorney in the detention center with that person's information to be ready to represent them to stop that deportation.
Essentially, what you're saying is that ICE is way bigger than the Rapid Response Network. They have more resources, but so how can we get involved? How can we be part of the movement and be, say, for example, a first responder? How can we go about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just reach out to us. Go ahead and check us out on our website. Reach out at the hotline. If you do actually see ICE activity, also report that. That's ways you can help. Get trained. Reach out to us. We'll be happy to train you. And then also reach out to folks that are actually affected. So it just it's a human interaction to help someone out that's in need, someone that's suffering, because it can be such a scary and lonely time when someone's detained.
So before we close out, can you just give us a brief summary of what it is that the Rapid Response has coming up within the next few months?
Sure. So like I mentioned, we all work very closely together, the different rapid response networks in California, and we have we realize some very crucial things moving forward that need to be changed in order for our communities to be safer. So one, very generally, we all need to work on defunding the Department of Homeland Security. So the budget fight happens in Congress every year. They decide how much money they're going to give to DHS, and DHS is the body that oversees ICE. So more money for DHS means more money for ICE officers, and that means more arrests in the community. And so we work together to really push our elected officials not to support this, to make sure that they protect immigrant communities. So that's something that we're working on. And we're always trying to find creative ways to get more legal representation to immigrants, because that's really the first need.
Well, thank you both for joining us today for the work that you do for the community. We hope to host you once again in the future. And thank you folks at home for watching. We'll see you soon.